Welcome, everybody. I know, let me rephrase that. That's what I'm talking about. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's better. So my name's Kevin Holt. I'm with Executor Protection. The seminar is going to be an hour and a half. Is that what the ad said? An hour and a half? I don't know what happened to my voice. It needs some lubrication. We've done these workshops throughout BC, and one time I was trying to get across a very simple point that we all have a day, right? We all have a day. We don't know when it is, but we've got one. And I tried to do it in sort of a cheeky way. So I got my really serious face on and I said, last year in Saskatchewan, the death rate was 100%. And this poor fellow in the front row didn't quite get my lame attempt at humor. His eyes went about this big. He turned to his wife. He said, "That seems awfully high." And then she turned to him and said, "It's a good thing we moved when we did." So anyway, we're not going to be cheeky anymore. We're going to get you a lot of good nuggets. You're going to have practical things. What is happening? You're waving at me. Well, I can't talk any louder than that. I'll do my best. Okay, so has anyone here gone on a trip recently? Yes, where'd you go? New York? I've always wanted to go to New York. Anybody else? Las Vegas. Mexico. Asia. Halifax. Okay. What are some of the things, if you go on a trip for a long time, not a short little Vegas one, was it a short Vegas one? 1 week. But if you go for an extended trip, what are some of the things you need to do to plan or prepare and make this thing work? Travel insurance. What else? Accommodations. Budgeting. What was that?
Planning.
Yes, what kind of planning?
Well, duplicates of your passport, for instance.
Passport, yep. Reservations. What about back at the house? You're gone for like 2 months.
Somebody to take care of it.
Someone to take care of it? What was that?
I just said the same thing.
Yes. Yeah. The pets, right? The mail. There's a lot of things you got to do. If you went for 2-3 months and you did absolutely nothing, would there be a little bit of chaos to come home to? A little bit of chaos, right? Well, when we die, it's like we went away. We actually did. We went away on the big trip. Except that there's a little difference. If we don't do any planning of any kind, it's not us that comes back to the chaos. We're leaving it for the family. So what we're going to do in the next hour and a half is we're going to learn as much as we can about how to make our families and our executors' job as easy as is possible. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do, and we're going to do some unique stuff here today. So first of all, what I'd like to do is do the numbers. So on this form, if you could turn to the back page, no pen, we just need your finger. So you should be having this out on your little clipboard. It's the back page of 9 Struggles, the yellow page. Very good. On this page are the numbers 1 through 54, and you guys are so good, they're a little bit disguised because they're different sizes and they're different fonts, but that's a small challenge, right? That's not going to stop us. So in 60 seconds, using your finger, not a pen, I'd like you to try and locate 1, 2, 3, and go up all the way to 54. On your mark, get set, go. 10 seconds. Should be right up near the 50s by now. Okay, time's up. How many of us here got to 54? That's a 0. Oh, 1. You did. Okay, how many here got to 50, 40, 35, 30, 25? Oh, I'm glad we did it. I thought maybe nobody did it. 20, 15, 10. Okay, what was that experience like? Frustrating. Yes, it was frustrating. The other seminar we did in Vancouver last week, somebody yelled out, "You're missing a bunch of numbers." Yes. That's one option. That's right. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is take your pen out. Get your pen ready. And do you see on your numbers, on that page, little black dots at the top? Do you see those black dots? They're real small. And do you see if you go straight down, do you see the bottom black dot? Connect those two lines, because we're going to have it look like this. Connect the two dots on the top to bottom, and then there's one right beside it, top to bottom. And then you'll notice two dots on the side as well. Do you see those? And if you go right across, there's a matching one, so it should look like tic-tac-toe. Now, when you make your tic-tac-toe, we're going to try this again, but it's going to be a totally different experience. Okay? You guys got your tic-tac-toes all done? Okay, in the first quadrant, it's not a quadrant, the first section, do you see number 1 there? Yeah. And if you move over 1, do you think number 2 is in the next one? Yeah. Yes, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, back up to 10. Let's try it now. On your mark, get set, go. Ten seconds. Okay, how many people here got to 54? Nicely done. What was the difference? Pretty obvious. What was the difference? Organization. A lot of Canadian will writers are leaving their executors the first exercise. There's no plan whatsoever, except the little bit of frustration you might have experienced 2-3 minutes ago is way worse. It's way heightened, because in that case, it's not a little game or a little exercise. It's real life, and there's real pressure on them. They've got to get to number 22, because it's a tax bill. They've got to find and reach number 35, and they've got to do it quickly, because there's identity theft, and they need to close out that card, or they have to find that address. So when we do no planning, no organization of any kind, we're leaving our executors the first exercise, except on steroids. That much frustration. But when we leave a little plan in place, any kind of plan, which is what we're going to try and give you today, their experience, we hope, is going to be much, much different, sort of like your second go at finding them. So I want to tell you a story, and then we're going to go through the 9 struggles that most executors face. The story is about 2 people, Louise and Jackie. And I'll jump right into it. So Louise was feeling under the weather for weeks. Weeks turned into months. She would go to her doctor and ask about it, and he'd always say something benign like, oh, it's a virus, or One time I think he said it's takes a long time to recover from pneumonia, don't worry about it. Finally, Louise knew something was wrong. Something just wasn't right. She felt it in her gut, and she came back and she really told the doctor, I want the test done. I mean, you've got to get this fixed. So they did all the tests they could, and they did discover late-stage pancreatic cancer. She was right all along in the sense that something was really wrong with her body. They gave her up to 5 months to live. After the shock wore off, Louise decided to dip into her bucket list. She had 5 months. She thought, I'm going to make the most or the best of this 5 months. Greece was number one on her bucket list, so she planned a trip. She couldn't bring her daughter Jackie, or Jackie had too many commitments, but she brought her best friend. So off they went to Greece, even though Louise was secretly feeling worse than ever. But she didn't want to say anything because she was determined to make sure that she enjoyed the next 5 months. The worst thing that could possibly happen, in fact, did happen. 3 weeks into the trip, Louise passed away. The friend was beside herself. She called Jackie to say, what should I do? Jackie said, well, let's just have the cremation happen there. Jackie's brother did not want that to happen. He said, no, I don't know what kind of funeral home is there. I don't know what's happening there. I just don't feel comfortable. Actually, he wanted to fly over to Greece and just be there with her. But amazingly, this was about 4 years ago, there was no crematorium in Greece. The country didn't have one. They have one now, it's about 1.5 years ago. So that wasn't an issue. So Jackie had to get Mom back. And what an experience of international travel and bureaucracy. She had to plan things. She had to deal with the laws of Greece, the local funeral home customs. She had to learn about the airline situation and regulations, interpreters, etc. Even with the Canadian Embassy's help, it was a bit of a nightmare. Very, very difficult. She also had to plan in terms of a funeral home on this end for the picking up of her mom. And that was even a challenge. How do you pick a funeral home? I mean, she's shocked. Do you just pick the closest one to you? Do you pick the cheapest in the yellow pages? How do you know which one to select? And so they finally brought Louise back here. And she had 2 siblings and, of course, a couple of kids that besides Jackie. That was about 6 people in all who had an opinion and had some emotion to go along with that opinion. So you can imagine, right? Everybody, even though there was a really serious diagnosis and they knew that she was very ill, they were still all shocked because death sometimes gives you a warning, but I don't think 3 weeks is much of a warning. So Jackie decided to have a little something informal instead of a big service in her house. Just some close friends come by. Her uncle, who they had a pretty good relationship with, the uncle said, no, I think we need to have a service. And Jackie, being the executor, said, no, that's not happening. The next day, she gets a call from the uncle, and he says, let's go for coffee. So they go for coffee, and the uncle just tells her, Jackie, Louise wanted a service. I know she did. She's my sister. She told me the song she wanted played at the service. And she said, and he said, and my whole family needs that closure. And Jackie didn't budge. She said, the buck stops here, and we're having something quiet, just small friends at the house, nothing else. You can imagine how that spills out, right? Because it's not just the uncle and Jackie now, but everybody in the family hears the story, and then they align themselves with whatever side they think, and now what should be a time to grieve and focus on things is mushrooming and escalating to some real family conflict. Despite Jackie's decision to choose such a minimal option, she ends up purchasing a casket, and an expensive casket. The family's surprised. What's this about? Jackie was surprised too. She said, I think I was just having a hard day that day when I had to make those decisions, and I wasn't thinking straight. So, while all this was happening, Jackie was looking for the will. Louise had moved about 1.5 years ago to a condo. She had 15 boxes stacked in the garage. She was going to get to them. Now, you'd think the diagnosis from the doctor would have made, everybody move quickly and clean up all this stuff, but it felt too real, I guess, too raw, too unnerving to face into that. And she thought, you know what, I got 5 months, I'll, the quintessential procrastination that we all struggle with, she thought, I'll put that off until a bit later. So there's Jackie looking for all the normal places you'd expect a will, not finding it. And then finally she thinks, well, I've exasperated every possibility. I need to look at those 15 boxes. So 6 days and 12 hours, 2 hours a day, she's opening up boxes, finding stuff, 30-year-old TELUS bills, right? Anybody here got a drawer that one day you're going to get to that drawer? One day I'm going to clean that drawer. 2 decades later, the drawer is still there. So finally she finds the will after 6 days. And it's an old will. It's not been reviewed. She is the executor, but there was some glitches in that will that would have been very nice to have addressed prior to this event. Despite being semi-retired, Jackie was a very busy person, and now she had to add being an executor to all of her roles and all of her activities. She kept reading about identity theft, and she felt some pressure to get moving on this estate. She had to contact the proper authorities relating to her mom's, and are you ready for this? Social insurance number, care card, birth certificate, passport, driver's license, credit cards, memberships, subscriptions, bank accounts, investments, charities, doctors, insurances, property deeds, internet identities, passwords, utility bills, vehicle information, and on and on. Some of you, all of you hopefully have a will, and you've all named an executor, and they thought, oh, what a nice honor. And they're smiling, and do they know what's coming down the pike? Questions raced through Jackie's mind. Am I allowed to take a fee for doing this? Will my family get mad at me if I do? Do I need to send all the beneficiaries a copy of the will? Can I go away on a holiday before the estate is settled or completed? How should I handle Mom's china and jewelry? She was really knocked off her feet when she went to the bank. She had a joint account with Mom to prevent what was about to happen. She went there to get money out, and the bank said, no, we're not releasing it. The account is frozen. And she complained about it being a joint account, but that didn't matter. The account was frozen. And so she got they said, we're not releasing it until probate. And so she got a crash course in what probate is, how much it costs, and she just handed it to a lawyer to do. In the meantime, the estate bills were adding up. The notary to notarize the death certificates, copies of the will, the notice for the paper, next month's rent for Louise, utility bills for her mom's place, and a whole bunch more, and they all went on Jackie's credit card because the account was frozen. She hadn't considered that that was going to happen, so she had hoped probate would come quickly. As the tasks of settling the estate began to get fewer and fewer, she found herself daydreaming in a good way. She had more time now, and she would think about her mom and the memories, the good memories that they shared together and the relationship they had. And then she thought about the times when she wasn't a good daughter and what could have been and why didn't she make those other decisions. And then some fear started to creep into her daydreaming, fear about forgetting her mom or forgetting the stories that she had or her funny sayings. And that bothered her. She didn't want to ever forget. And it dawned on her that she hadn't really asked as many questions of her mom as she would have liked. And here she is, 44 years old. Mom's gone, and the only information she's going to get now is secondhand info from an uncle or an aunt. And it didn't suffice in her mind. Now, why do I tell you this story? It's not a good story. It started bad, and it went bad. I tell you this story because, surprisingly, there's a lot of situations in BC, in Canada, where that's maybe not exactly what happens, but very similar. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to our family as much as we can. So let's go over the 9 struggles. If you could take out that sheet, the 9 struggles, we're going to go through them and talk about some solutions. And as you go through them, make note of which struggles you feel are already looked after. There's a little part there that says taken care of on the far right. So check off yes if it's taken care of, and if it's not, check off no, because you don't want to leave anything for your executor that you don't need to. Number 1, the unpredictability of death. So Louise was traveling in Greece when death occurred, and that posed some unique problems, right? Most countries have crematoriums, of course. And logically, it makes sense. If cremation is preferred, it makes sense to have the death, the cremation happen where death occurred, in that city or in that country. But invariably, kids prefer to have mom or dad brought back home, and husbands or wives prefer to have the loved one brought back home. Any ideas on why that would be? Why do you think that is?
To say goodbye for closure.
To say goodbye for closure. Okay, that's one.
They may already have a funeral plot.
May already have a funeral plot, yeah.
Service is due.
Mm-hmm. Any other reasons? Yeah, a viewing. Yeah. If you put yourself in their shoes, death occurs in Vietnam or Mexico or wherever it is, and you really care for them, like you are connected, you could easily feel like what's that funeral home like? And is it above board? And what will we get back? I mean, it sounds strange, but it's a thought that they have. Well, you know, are those going to be mom's ashes or not? And those things keep people up at night, and they feel much more secure and safe if it's a local funeral home where they have a reputation. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that happens quite a bit. Your solution here is to look into your repatriation coverage. For those of you who travel, here's your solution. You should ask 3 questions of the people, and there's a note. You got 2 ways to take notes, by the way. On this form itself, you can write on, and then you've also got a page in there with notes. So either one works fine. So a lot of us are trusting coverage that is very substandard. You folks that travel, a lot of us are trusting your repatriation coverage, and I'm not sure if we should be. So here's the 3 problems with most coverage that's out there. Number 1, old limits. They've got a lot of our credit card coverage has limits of $6,000 or $7,000 that they will contribute to bringing a loved one back. And in many cases now, it's $15,000 or $20,000 to bring that loved one back. Those limits are way outdated. That's number 1. Number 2, the dreaded fine print. In Louise's case, there was no coverage at all. It was null and void because she had pre-existing conditions, right? Well, they can be brutal on those. I mean, she had a very late stage cancer, but for some folks, a heart murmur is going to be considered a pre-existing condition, and there'll be no coverage. So that stuff is brutal, and it's important to check into that. You don't want a plan like that. You want a plan that if you go, you're covered no matter what your health situation is. And the third flaw in most coverage is they're reimbursement only. So you got a loved one that travels and a death occurs, the family member has to fly there, or if they're already there, they've got to deal with the embassy, they've got to find an interpreter, they have to find a local funeral home in that city or country, they have to deal with the airlines. They don't just pay for it, they have to do all the steps, and that's the brutal part. So what you want is something a little bit different. You want something where they do all the steps for you. It's a phone call, a 1 phone call system, and there's no pre-existing conditions, and they don't just pay for bringing the body back, they do all the steps. So solution to number 1 is make a phone call to your repatriation coverage, if that's a credit card or wherever your BCAA, and ask those 3 questions. Pre-existing, the limits, how much money, and is it reimbursement only, or will they do all the steps? Okay? Let's go now to number 2, funeral home. What problems do you think could arise from 2 or 3 of your loved ones walking into a funeral home to make decisions about your service. Okay? What could go south? What could go wrong in that scenario?
Everybody has a different opinion.
Everybody has a different opinion. I got two brothers. We're pretty close. There's three of us. But when we go even to order a pizza, we got people arguing about whether pineapple should be on it or not. You have a situation where there's big decisions and there's grief and the emotion is heightened, and all of a sudden you've got potential conflict, right? What's another thing that could happen? 2 or 3 of your loved ones are walking into the funeral home to make decisions about you and your service. What's something that could not really go right? Cost factor. I used to do pre-arrangements. Julianne, who you'll meet in a couple of moments, she does them now, but I used to do them. And the first day, it's 25 years ago, the first day on the job, I was talking to a lady in Chilliwack, and she says, Kevin, her husband died about a year previous. She says, Kevin, if my husband could have sat up in that casket, he would have punched me right in the nose. And I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh or not, because it was my first day, and it sounded very strange to me. So I held it together, and I said, oh, why is that? And she said, because I did everything he told me not to do. Right? Because of the emotion, right? They call it emotional overspending. And do you think that happens in a funeral home? Probably more than any other place on planet Earth, right? There's lots of things that can happen. Conflict. Funeral directors tell us stories of fist fights where people are disagreeing because of sibling rivalry and that sort of thing. In our story, Jackie's uncle was taken aback at her cremation decisions. He couldn't believe she wanted nothing, just a little thing in the house. And of course, those things are intense, right? And people think, oh, the oldest will, but if you got 3 kids, they all think that each view, their opinion is as valid as the other. They don't think that the eldest should call the shots in this case. They think they all have a say, and that can sometimes, whose opinion wins, right? It's never a wise move to leave all those decisions for people to make when they're under that kind of stress. I would even say, I'd go as far as to say it's our responsibility even to decide for ourselves our cremation or our burial plans. So that's your solution. Pre-arrange your cremation or your burial. Get that thing. I know it's not high on the it's not even mid on the priority list. But sometimes the urgent things of life crowd out the important. This is important. It might not feel urgent, but it's important. I call it the do-nothing wheel. Have you ever heard of the do-nothing wheel? Okay, you end up at the end of the wheel with not having done anything. So the wheel works like this. Well, honey, we don't need to get our will. We don't need to do our funeral pre-plan. We don't need to go to that seminar because we're healthy. We're fine. So you do nothing. And then you get sick. And it's too depressing. And it's too ominous. And it's too daunting. And so you wait till you get better. And you end up doing nothing. So the do-nothing wheel is a bad wheel to get stuck in. So the idea is when you're young and healthy, get her done. Get her done. And a couple of points about your prearrangement. More and more people are rejecting the traditional funeral. If that's you, if you're rejecting the traditional funeral, that's fine. But don't swing the pendulum all the way over to having absolutely nothing. There is power and there's closure in a little something. What do they call it now? A celebration of life. Have you folks heard of that? Yeah. It doesn't have to be big and expensive and religious. If you're not religious, it can celebrate your life, a good slideshow, whatever. Those things can be very, very healing. So the pendulum doesn't have to swing all the way to the other side. In our story, Louise was away, and that created complications. But picture the reverse. What if Louise was at home and Jackie was traveling? What if you're at home and it's your executor who's out enjoying the trip of a lifetime in Cuba or whatever, and then they get the phone call that mom or dad passed away, that you were gone. And you can just imagine their heart starts to race right in the middle of the phone call. It's just beating out of their chest. That's the kind of stuff that actually, we don't want it to happen, but it does. Can you imagine, even though the shock would still be there, can you imagine your son or daughter in Cuba or whatever, if they get that call, but everything was planned and all the decisions were made? Wouldn't that lower that temperature and just calm things down? Let's go to number 3. Old will, no will. The stress Jackie experienced over the will is surprisingly common. What are some things Louise could have done that would have made things easier for her daughter in regards to the will? Any ideas? Put it in a safe deposit box instead of just the box that was in the garage. That's a very good idea. Any other thoughts?
Go over it with her.
What's that?
Actually, go over the will with her.
Go over the will with her, review the will. I was in the Yukon giving a seminar about 2 months ago, and this guy in the front row says, how often should you review the will? And I said, well, when's the last time you did it? I don't know why I said that. It seemed cheeky, and he looked at me like his hands were caught in the cookie jar, and then he looked to his wife, he looked back at me, and he says, well, we wrote it 38 years ago. I says, well, there you go. You should review the will every 38 years. So they could have reviewed it, absolutely. You in the back with the hat, did you have an update? Update the will, yeah. So lots of things that could have been done. Review that will. How often should they review it, do you think? Every 5 years? That's probably a good idea. Or if there's a big change in your family dynamic or your financial situation, that's probably a good idea. And get a copy of the will to your executor. That's an excellent idea. A copy of the will to your executor. Your executor is not going to come up to you and say, hey, Dad, I got an idea. Let's sit down and go over the will today. They're not going to do that. Why? Because it can be so easily misunderstood, right? What, do I look pale? What's the sudden interest in my will? What's going on here? And people get all upset, right? But it's smart to go review it with the executor and then to give them a copy. And I would write on the front page of the copy where the original is. Just write on it, the original will is in the safe deposit box at the RBC Bank at the corner of 1st and Main. Or the original is with the lawyer blankety blank at the certain law firm at the corner of Harris and whatever. Or the original is in the freezer down in the basement right under the Snow Star ice cream. The point is they're holding the copy. They know it's a copy and not the original because they see the writing on it, and they also know now where the original is. So not a bad idea. If you could jot your questions down, that'd be great. But remember them because they're important.
It's not a question, it's a statement. I think it's better even to send a copy of the will to everyone.
Oh, some people do that. All the beneficiaries get a copy. Yeah, some people do that. Let's go down to number 4. Thank you. For time-consuming searches. I don't know about you, how your memory is. I'm 59. Something's going on. It's not good. So I walk in a room and I don't know what I'm in the room for. Anybody have that experience? I'm here to get something. What is it I'm supposed to get? I don't know. So, and then when you look for something, if you look just for 10 minutes, it's frustrating. A 10-minute search is frustrating. Multiply that by 30 times. 30 searches. That's this kind of stuff executors go through. We all have good intentions. So, and our procrastination and disorganization actually can cost money too, besides frustration. As we sit here right now this morning, there is hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in what kind of bank accounts in Canada? Dead, orphaned, unclaimed. In bank accounts and insurances. There's a little account in Red Deer, there's a little account in Victoria, one in Coquitlam, and they're all waving a little flag. I'm over here, and the executor doesn't know. You will writers, you might have told them 10 years ago that I got an account there. You didn't expect to die. And then 20 years later, that's a 30-year gap. And do we think our executive is going to remember 30 years ago that there was an account back there? No, they're not. So the solution here is to create a system of organizing all your stuff. Create a system of organization, filing for all your stuff, and that's easily said and not easily done. Not that it's hard to do, it's just hard to get motivated to do that one. We're going to help you with that. Number 5. Am I going too fast or am I going okay? Okay, good. Legal requirements of estate settlement. Number 5. Jackie had a lot of questions. Who can blame her? It's not an easy task, and it's getting harder and harder. As a matter of fact, the fastest growing insurance in Canada is executors insurance. They're worried about being sued by disgruntled beneficiaries, and they're taking insurance out, or that they might have made a mistake in settling things. So we included, as a little gift for you today for coming out, this handout, which is a guide for your executor. So it's not exhaustive, but it walks them through the steps that are needed, and it's very helpful. So save that and give that to your executor, and that's going to help them in terms of settling the estate. They can also purchase a guidebook from Staples. It's about $20 on how to settle an estate, or they can get a lawyer. I think they're a little bit more, about $25 now for the lawyer. I'm teasing. They're a little more expensive, but they can be very good at what they do. Number 6, immediate bills. Executors are often surprised, just as Jackie was, with the flurry of estate bills. So take a look. Your handout is, there it is. This one right here, common estate expenses. Do you see that one? Take that out, common estate settlement expenses, and just take a moment to purview the things that can be needing to be paid for fairly quickly in an estate settlement that your executor is going to face. Don't read the italics. It'll take you too long. Just hit the big ones. Second column, probate, strata fee, tax accountant, utilities for household, memorial tea, yard work, and that's just the second column, and there's more. That's not exhaustive. So turn that page over, and does it say probate on there?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go through a little bit of that, because that's often misunderstood. Things are frozen until. So number 1, probate is the process of the, what should we write on there? That's a good guess, but I'm not looking for courts. Very good. Courts. You want to write in the word courts for number 1. Number 2, all wills require probate. True or false? Very good. Number 3, the financial institutions have the right to demand it prior to releasing the deceased asset to the executor. So here's how it works. In your 60 years of living, you've accumulated lots of stuff, and you've accumulated people you love. So you wrote a will. Hopefully you've all done that. And in the will, you've named an executor, the person who's going to fulfill the wishes of your will. Okay, who's going to take your stuff and give it to the people that you love. Pretty simple, actually. But before they do that, before they give all your stuff away, they got to do something very simplistic, very rudimentary. They must go and get the stuff. They got to evaluate it too, yes. But they can't give it away until they get it. So they're going to go to that bank, say, up to the teller, and they're going to say, my mom passed away, I need $7,000 that's in the account there, please. And the teller's going to say to them, not happening. So then they go back to Kearney's, they get a death certificate from the funeral home, and they get a will, and it's notarized, it looks really official, it says that they're the executor. They come back to the teller, here's the death certificate, here's the will, now I'd like the $7,000. What does the teller say then?
No.
Still no. Why do they say no?
Because of identity.
Power of attorney is what you need to help you with that.
Well,
Possibly.
not at that point. It's helpful, but later. Identity theft, what if that will was written, excuse me, what if another will was written a month after this one? Is this one any good? It's completely useless, right? What if she went into the old folks' home, wrote the will, got Mom's hand, put a pen in it, and guided her hand to sign the will, and she wasn't sure what she was signing? Is that will legal? No, it's not. Does the teller know that?
No.
She doesn't know. She hands over the $7,000. That person goes to Hawaii, has a great time. The beneficiaries get this, and what do they do to the bank? They sue the bank, and the teller loses her job. So she's going to want to know that that document, that will is legit. That's what the teller wants to know. How do we know if a will is legitimate? Not notarized. Probate. Probate is a stamp from the courts saying this will has been verified. Probate is the process of the courts putting that stamp on that will, which verifies it, which legitimizes it and makes it valid. Then, when that will is presented and it's got the probate stamp, we know the Supreme Court of BC has said this will's the real deal. Now the teller's got to move, the teller's got to act, and possibly that $7,000 goes over to that executor. So people have said to me, Kevin, will my will need to be probated? Does my estate require probate? Sometimes you can know ahead of time. Like if you have property in one name, probate will be required. If you own a house that's in one name, probate will be required. But oftentimes we don't know if probate's going to be needed. Do you know how you find out? Your executor finds out when they go to get the stuff. If they go to get it and they get it, they give the $7,000, they go, hot dog, I saved that money and I don't have to probate? Great. Why probate if you don't have to? But if they go there to get that GIC or that savings account or whatever it is and they won't release it, then they go, oh, I guess I've got to go get that stamp on the will and go through that process and do an evaluation of the estate and all of those steps. They're going to discover when they go to get your stuff. Does that make sense? Okay, jot your questions down because this is the popcorn of questions. They start popping like crazy, so jot them down. Number 4, the granting of probate requires the executor to calculate the exact value. You want to write in the word value on number 4 for the probate page. Sorry for all my coughing. Is that too loud with me coughing? My son got married on Saturday, and somehow I think I yelled too much. I don't know what. I was yelling, no, no! No, it was awesome. Okay, but my voice is losing it. Number 5, assets not included in the probate calculation, thus not incurring any probate fees, are assets in joint ownership with right of survivorship and assets naming a beneficiary. So the word you want to write in on number 5 is joint, which is fitting nowadays. Okay, so people jointly own their house, their car, their bank accounts. They jointly own their investments, all sorts of stuff. Because then when death occurs, that item goes to the other joint owner. And there's no probate fee. No probate fee on that. So people like doing that. Number 6, probate fees vary by province. In BC, they work out to about, what do you think? What percent of the estate do you think? That's a good guess. Some estates I say 69%, and I used to say that as a joke, and it worked really well. Some people laughed, but others were having little mini heart attacks. And I thought it's not right for me to say that, so I've stopped that joke. 1.4%. So on a $1 million estate, probate fee of 1.4% is $14,000. Some people think that's a lot. We pride ourselves here in Canada. We don't have any estate taxes like the U.S. does. We don't. If you got $1 million and it goes in money and it goes to the kids, there's no tax on that. But they erased the TAX and they slipped in FEE, and they got us, right? Some houses in Vancouver, it's like a $25,000 probate fee. The same house in Edmonton, same value of the house, the probate fee, $525.
Even on the principal?
The most you can pay for probate in the province of Alberta, the max, is $525. Here you got people paying $30,000 for probate. So the moral of the story is, the night before you go, move to Edmonton. Okay, let's move on. Well, we won't go to 7 yet. Let's stay at 6. So one solution, we're talking about immediate expenses having to be paid by the executor out of their own credit card because things are frozen because of probate. That's what we're talking about. So a solution to that is the following: a little life insurance policy, $2,000 to $10,000. Oftentimes $5,000. That little policy works like gold because it's only available when death occurs, which is when it's needed, and it goes straight to that executor right when they need it the most. And there's no risks. Joint bank accounts carry with them risks. The risk is you have a joint account with, not with spouses, there's no risk there, but with an adult and a parent and a child. If that child is going through divorce proceedings, let's say it's your son, that divorcing wife gets half of what he owns, and he owns part of your bank account. So there are some real risks in joint accounts, but in a little life insurance policy, there's no risk because they can't take half. So that's ideal to help pay for those immediate estate bills instead of putting it on the executor's credit card. Number 7, piles of paperwork. Oh, so we're on 7. I wonder if I should number 7 on this one. Sorry. Too many numbers, too many pages. Piles of paperwork. Has anyone had the great pleasure of being on the phone with a government office? Isn't that wonderful? Press 2, press 7, press 3, and then the options you don't want to press because none of them work, but you have to press because you don't want to get out of that loop because the loop was so hard to get into, if you know what I mean. Well, tracking down obscure addresses and phone numbers is challenging enough, and that's what your executor does. And with identity theft being almost epidemic, the quicker the better in terms of them getting those addresses and phone numbers and contacting and closing all of that stuff. So we're going to share with you a very good system afterwards. This one here is one of the few ones out of the 9 that doesn't have a solution. I mean, it does, but it's very unique and it's hard to find that solution. So in other words, executors just have to go through the paperwork. But we'll share with you an option that kind of eliminates that. Let's go to number 8. We got solutions for this. Rising funeral costs. What happened with Jackie? She ended up purchasing an expensive casket even though she chose a simple cremation. Why would she do that?
It's easy to get confused.
It's easy to get confused. When stress is heightened, the decision making, there's all this science of what happens in the, I don't know all the terms, but maybe somebody here knows the terms. Right in here, there's a section of the brain, obviously not working for me, where when stress hits, you get clouded and your decision is affected. So your solution here is to prepay. We talked about pre-planning. If you prepay your cremation or your burial, most funeral homes will freeze the cost. That's a nice thing. I mean, costs, you know, anybody here know what the average Canadian house cost in 1969? Average house in Canada, 1969. 30,000? 15? 19,000. A house for 19,000 bucks. So prices can go up. I mean, funerals, hopefully they won't go up like that. But, you know, in the next 10, 20 years, you know, they are going to go up. If you can freeze that and lock that in, that just helps the estate. Why pay more? So, and not only that, but the full amount, many funeral homes, and we're talking Kearney's, we're going to recommend Kearney's in a moment, Kearney's Funeral Services. Some funeral homes, you don't have to pay it all up front. You can just chip away at it. Oh, can I just put so much a month? Yes. But if I only put 50 bucks down, you're not going to freeze the cost, are you? I mean, I have to finish it before you freeze it. Oh, no. when you start the plan with your first down payment of whatever it is you can afford, $50, the price gets frozen right there, which is really, really, I think, excellent. 2 tips: if you do prepay for your cremation or burial, insurance, if you use an insurance company, they have a bonus because of that safety net. So for a lot of folks, if they're relatively healthy and they chip away and put in that first $50, if it's through insurance that they're prepaying their cremation or burial and a death occurs before they finish their 10-year plan or 5-year plan or whatever it is, if a death occurs, the insurance kicks in, everything's paid for. So we've had cases where somebody had a $9,000 funeral, and 6 months into it, I think they had paid $600, whatever it was, and something tragic happened. Nobody wants that. But when the family sees that that whole bill is looked after, and the family doesn't have to scramble to make up the difference, that certainly helps in terms of their financial situation. Second tip is don't base your choice primarily on the cheapest option, because your family will have to deal with whatever funeral home you've selected. Will they still be around? Will they treat your loved ones with respect and dignity? In BC, you got 3 types of funeral homes. This is my opinion here, so bear with me, and this is just my opinion. 3 types. That's how I divide them up. Discount, family-owned, multinational corporation. The discount ones got nice low prices. You know, $795 gets you everything you want. Okay. Maybe they're okay, maybe they're not. I've heard that in some cases they don't have a building, they use a basement, they have one van, they have to shop the looking for other funeral homes to see if they have any room to hold their deceased. In other words, what I'm trying to say, stay away. You know, if I'm going to jump out of an airplane, I'm not buying my parachute on eBay. Okay? And I don't want to have my loved ones dealing with that. Family-owned, local, and then multinational. Both good. Multinational, a little more expensive because they're traded on the stock exchange, and that's just the reality of life, but very good funeral homes. Family-owned is the ones we recommend because they're in the middle, they're local, and we like that. And Kearney's has been around for, 103 years? 110. 110 years they've been serving British Columbians in the Lower Mainland, and they're good. So that's who we recommend is Kearney's. And they got a little storefront in Cloverdale that deals with a whole bunch of Surrey folks, and they do a really fine job. Okay, let's go to number 9, fading memories. The grieving process is different for everyone. We're all unique and we all grieve differently. If I may share a personal story, if that's okay. I was in grade 10, 15 years old, so I'm 59, that's 44 years ago, I guess, when they pulled me out of class and said that my dad had died. He got in a head-on collision on the Trans-Canada. So 15 years old, pretty tough, right? I didn't shed a tear. The funeral, didn't shed a tear. 8 years later, when I was 23, I shed a whole bunch of tears. It took me 8 years to grieve. I don't know. I can't understand. I can't explain it. But it was real, and when it hit like a tsunami. And I remember standing in the lineup one time at a movie theater. I was 18. I was with a bunch of buddies, and we were Friday night going to the theaters, and I just got whacked with a desire, that's not strong enough a word, an intense need to see my dad. 18 years old, I needed to see him right then. Couldn't see him. He was gone. He's in a cemetery in Coquitlam, but I needed to. And as I was standing in line, my knees got so weak that I literally thought I was going to collapse in the lineup to go see the movie. And I was just thinking, okay, I got to stand up. I got to stay standing up. But I wanted to see my dad. Would I have loved to have something of his, like a journal, like Jackie wanted to know a bit more about her mom Louise? You know what I'm saying? Would I have loved to have a journal? Yes. Yes and yes. Would I have loved to have known more of his background, what he was like at 18, what struggles he had? Oh my gosh, you know, when you're young, you don't ask questions of your parents because you think they're not really human. You know what I mean? They're there, they feed us, and you know. But then when you get older, you start thinking, oh, they're just like me, and they got a story to tell. You got a story to tell. So some of you aren't into this. You're not going to write anything down. I understand that. No problem. But some of you, my encouragement, the solution to number 9 is write down a little bit of your story. You think, oh, my kids, they're old. They know it all. No, they don't. And your grandkids know even less. Your grandkids almost know nothing about your life. Jot it down, and you'll be amazed how valuable that will be. Okay, if you could turn your page over to this page. It's on the other side of the notes. It's called a drawing exercise. We're doing good. We'll have an extended time for questions, so don't worry about that. Just jot them down when they come to your mind. We're going to do a drawing exercise. So what I would like you to do is, can you see okay on that side? Is a circle in the middle of your page. And on the top of the circle is a stick man. And he's got a, what is that? A top hat and a nice little bow tie. In the middle of the circle, 5 rectangles, any size, anywhere in the circle. And then in the top left-hand corner is another stick person, except this person has, oh, those are very bad wings. Well, they have wings. Could you make your wings a bit better than mine? Mine looks like a bad cape. You want wings on that person. And if you woke up this morning and you looked in the mirror and you thought, I'm not bad. I'm a pretty good person. I feel pretty good about myself today. Put a little halo above this person's head. Okay, we're going to do a cheesy breathing exercise. It's a group breathing exercise, and it is cheesy. On the count of 3, an inhale and then an exhale. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that was your final breath. You've all just died. Sorry. It could have been sudden. It could have been prolonged. It could have been in the throes of passion. It doesn't really matter in the end, does it? What you're looking at is the table at the funeral home that your family's going to gather around at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. This person here is the funeral director. The 5 rectangles represent some of the documentation that's going to need to be done. Your parents' maiden names, your parents' birthplaces, stuff that your kids, the grandkids, may not know. You are here on the left-hand side sporting a nice new set of wings. And you would like to give some input in here, but there's no chance of that happening. Now, what's missing on my drawing is who's sitting around that table. And for me, if they don't predecease me, it would be my wife Arlene and my 3 sons. And they, if they don't predecease me, will be around that table talking to this fellow about what to do. If you could, for me, write down around your table who is sitting there. For some of you, it's one person, a brother. For others, it could be a bunch of kids. Who's around your table? Okay. This isn't for answering. I've gone through this process myself, so I've done what I'm asking you to do. You don't have to write anything down, just think. Okay? So we know there's a lot of emotion around that table, around your table. Do these people that you've named, Do they know what you want in terms of the big issues? Do they know what you want in terms of the smaller issues, like what to do with the cremated remains? Where the plot would be, if there's going to be an open mic, if there would be anything like that. Do they know those things? Do they share the same views of funerals or the value of viewing as you do? Do they have the same religious views of you or of each other? Has one of them become religious, much more so than the others, and could that become an issue as they, as a committee, make decisions? Does one of these people that you've written down, do they sort of go, they kind of get stepped on easy by a more aggressive sibling where their view doesn't really count, but the other ones always get their way? Does one of these have a lot more money than the others, and will the others look to them and expect them to carry more than their weight, and could that become an issue? The thing is, death is almost always traumatic, and it's almost always messy, even when it's expected. And when there's no plan in place, all we're doing is heightening the chance of conflict at this table that lasts literally for years. This is not the time to be making all these decisions. Picture the alternative scenario. Whoever you put down as this person, the first person, they walk in and the funeral director says, "Oh, your mom or dad, I think, have a plan here. Just a minute." They go around to the back and they come out with a file and they say, "Yeah, your mom came in here years ago. We've got all the information here. It says they want cremation. It says viewing only if the family need it. Otherwise, no, that's fine. They want it at the golf club, and it's all paid. We just need a signature right here." How does that person feel at that moment? That's the gift, right? That's a gift. I got my gift all done. I don't want it opened yet. I don't want them touching that gift. It's wrapped. It's got a bow. I got it all looked after, my 3 sons and my wife. But I don't want them to open it. But it could be tomorrow. It literally could be tomorrow. And when it is, they're going to not be mumbling under their breath, "Oh, Dad, couldn't you have made this a little easier?" Oh, they love me. They wouldn't do it maliciously, but just, the frustration. That's not going to happen. They're going to be thinking, "Wow, Dad, you really made this easier." And that's what we wanted to motivate you folks this morning to do. We want you on this page where it says taken care of, we want all those boxes checked. Yes, 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 and yes. That's our goal. Now, may I take, before we do questions, may I take 5 minutes to explain to you a little bit about executive protection and how we can help? Would that be okay? Okay. Julianne, could you, well, you'll come, they'll see you anyway at the end, right? So you can wave and say hi to them. She does pre-arrangements with Kearney's. There you go, that's the wave. And she can help in one simple appointment. So whoever she meets with is going to get, as a gift free for coming today, a Wishes and Memories guide. And in here is going to be all the forms necessary for putting down your cremation or burial wishes. Put it down on file very nicely. There's also a section in here on where everything is. The safe deposit box, your bank accounts, your insurances. There's a whole section on where all of the stuff is, so it's at your kids' or your executor's fingertips. Okay? And there's a bunch of other forms in here that are very helpful. So everybody that she meets with, whether you purchase anything or you purchase nothing, gets one of these as a thank you for coming today. Okay, so that's going to be very, very helpful. Now, what I'd like to do to give you an idea of what we do, I want to get into some National Hockey League illustrations. Okay? If you were picking the all-star team of the ages, the best hockey players in history, give me an idea of who would be on that line. We're talking about 3 forwards and 2 defensemen. Throw out some names. Who should be on there? Bobby Orr, okay. Gretzky, okay. Gordie Howe. Okay, you're nailing them right on. Okay, so the experts say this. Oh, yeah. The experts say Wayne Gretzky, Gordie Howe, and Maurice the Rocket Richard on the forward, and we can argue about Mario and a bunch of other guys. And some people here are going, what's he talking about, who aren't hockey fans? My apologies. And then on defense, Doug Harvey and Bobby Orr. So the experts say that's the top line in hockey history. Okay, well, that's what Executive Protection, our company, has done. We've scoured the country, and we've selected an all-star team, the best of the best, to look after your families. For instance, we wanted to have worldwide protection for folks, so we went to the company that the Canadian military uses to bring our soldiers home when they die in battle. And they are now part of the team. So that when you are out traveling, and if something tragic happened, you don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions. You don't have to worry about the ability of that company. They're like the top in the world. No fine print, kind of like the Wayne Gretzky of travel coverage. Also, they knew that most people would like their cremation or burial prepaid and frozen, so we went to Assurant Life, which is the largest pre-arrangement insurance company in Canada, and they handle almost 90% of every pre-arrangement in the entire country. Their parent company insures Apple, Sony, and General Electric, so they are tried and true, and they're very respected. And what I like about them is they allow you to chip away at the costs monthly if you can't pay for it all up front. Sort of like the Rocket Richard of final funding and final wishes funding. For the paperwork, Executive Protection sought out Peacehold, based in Ontario. We loved what they do, and we sought them out. They're head and shoulders above the rest. We call them the Gordie Howe of paperwork. Here's what they do. Your executor gets a kit in the mail, probably about 10 days after you've passed away. The kit is going to look something like this, not as messy as mine because I've shown it 1,000 times. And there's going to be forms in the kit for your estate. These forms are going to do, they can do up to 300 things. Most estates don't need near that, but the point is they're exhaustive and comprehensive. The forms aren't generic. They're not blank. They're already filled in. It's personalized to your estate. And then here's what the executor has to do. Are you ready? Executor signs where the red sticker says sign here. That's it. The executor signs there, peels off the sticker, and then puts it in the envelope that's been provided with an address, a return address, and even a stamp. It's that simple. Page after page, sign here, and then put it in the envelope that's provided. All of that loop, phone on hold, finding addresses, done in one kit. So when we saw that in Ontario, we said, can you put this across the country? He says, not a problem. And now we've put his caboose onto our train. He's part of the all-star team. And then, of course, for wills, and if you haven't got your will on our website, you guys are patient. This is like I don't want to be an infomercial, but I am excited about how we help. I really am. Thank you. That's good. So on this page, this brochure, on the very back is a website. If you haven't got your will, you can go to this website, our website, and we'll get you a will for, are you ready for this? $812. That's all. No, sorry. $38. And it's a good will. We went to the Canadian Legal Wills, who are the best. We checked them out of 5 stars. They got, out of, I think, 1,000 people reviewing it, a 4.9 rating, which is almost perfect. So we love that. So you can get your will there. If you were thinking, you know what, I need to redo my will, why get it redone when you can just get a new one for $38? A little caveat. If your estate is complex, and we can discuss that in the question period, don't use that will. You need a lawyer. If your estate's complex, you go to a lawyer or notary. But if your estate is simple, that one's going to do you really well. So we call that the Doug Harvey of our team. And for your plan to be the best, you don't want some company in Toronto or New York looking after your loved one, when they pass away, you want somebody local. And that's why we chose the local funeral home that has the greatest track record, which is Kearney's, 110 years. We call them the Bobby Orr of our all-star team. So what that is, it's a national and local team to care for your family when you're gone. A team that is unlike any other. It's simple. It can be explained in 1 hour appointment with Julianne, but it's expert. And here's what I like. Last point. You folks are the coach. If you just want Gordie Howe, you just say, get the other 4 guys out. I want Gordie Howe. You're in charge. You decide which experts you want to use. So that's how we can help. I don't know if that was muddy or if it was clear or not, but if you could fill out the feedback forms, tell us where we did well and tell us where we could improve and pick up our game. And number 3 on there says you would like to learn more. If you circle yes, Julianne will give you a call. Maybe you're just in the fact-finding stage. You want to find out what does a cremation cost. Not a problem. There's no obligation of any kind. She'll come by. She'll give you the book, which is a memory book, and she'll answer any of your questions. Or maybe you're ready to prearrange. She'll help you with that too. Okay? Fill that in, and we got a door prize, Tim Hortons, and then we'll do questions. So forms, door prize, and then questions.
I need more space where it says phone.
What's that?
I need more space where it says phone.
And if you could fold them in half when you're done, that would be great. Julianne, could you help collect? Thank you so much. That's right.
It's all bills. Yeah, it's all bills.
And they're due tomorrow.
Also, a little housekeeping. If it's okay, could you take everything with you except the clipboards? I'm tired of buying new clipboards.
Thank you. You've been
We'll do questions in 1 minute. Anybody not have their, and they're all in? Are they all in? Can't win unless they're all in. And shouldn't make such a big deal. It's not a franchise, it's just a gift card. Okay, the winner is that Ellen? do you think?
Ellen
And it would
Haberts.
be Huberts?
Huberts? Haberts?
Hyberts? Heberts? Ellen, where are you? There's $25 on this card. What are the odds of that?
Kidding me.
There's only one person that left. Okay, well, we're not, you know what?
Another draw. Here we go. Here's one.
You snooze, you lose. Sorry, Ellen. Sandra Manning. There you go.
Fabulous.
Thank you. What if she went to the washroom and she comes right back? Oh, we're thank you. Then we'll, excuse me, we'll replace that one for you. Thank you for coming. You're all free to leave. You're all free to stay for the question period. If you do leave, please leave quietly. And now we're time for questions. Yes.
I'm a psychologist, and so I have a suggestion. You know that thing about memories, creating memories, and not having them? Instead of writing, lots of people don't want to write. You can interview the person. So I interviewed my parents, and I thought, 2 hours, 6 hours each later. But then I put the tapes away, the recorder away, and stuff. And now I have their voices as well as what they said. And it's a whole, it changed our relationship. So just something else to do.
I'm writing that down. Thank you so much. Voices and that's how we grow. Okay, yes.
Ask the question, if you choose not to use your children or whatever, wife, husband, to be the executor, and you use a lawyer, would you still need to go through the steps in terms of life insurance policy? How does that work?
Well, yeah, because the lawyer has no, the lawyer's going to do the steps of the executor. Now, they're going to maybe do them better because they know their job and they're going to charge for it, but they're still bound by that financial institution that says we need probate, right? So, so in my mind, it would still be wise to have a little fund to take care of those immediate expenses. Yeah.
Okay, but he would, you get charged at the end anyways, like.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And lawyers can charge by the hour. They can charge a set fee, or they can charge a percentage of the estate. I think most experts say by the hour is not ideal, so a set fee or a percentage. And they're as fair and good as banks and credit unions. You know, a bank or credit union can be your executor. If you have very little money in your plan, do you think they're going to be your executor? No. It has to be big enough that they get rewarded. But they can be very good executor, a bank or a credit union, if you're having trouble finding an executor.
Thank you.
Yes?
If you have a beneficiary on a bank account, does that have to go into the probate issues, or can they have access to that?
Okay, that's a great question. So you don't have beneficiaries for bank accounts. You have joint account owners. You have a beneficiary or a successor annuitant for a TFSA, tax-free savings account, but in bank accounts you have joint owners. So here's what happened. Back in Ontario, there was a case where a mom had a lot of money. She had 3 daughters, and she got a joint account with one of the daughters. Put $20,000 in that account, and everything is fine. Mom passed away. Now, what do we do? Who gets that $20,000? The daughter. Is she supposed to? It's a good question. Was it a gift? So this is the question. So the daughter felt, yeah, it was a gift. I got the $20,000. The 2 sisters had a different view.
Yes.
Their view was, this money is in the estate. It was supposed to be in the estate. Mom wanted that $20,000 spread equally amongst the 3 kids. She just had this joint account as an administratively easy way to deal with finances. So they went to court, and the judge had the difficult task of climbing into the mind of the deceased mom to know what was her intent. Did she want to give it to the one child, or did she want it spread amongst the three? So what, do you think she sided with the one, or do you think she sided with the two sisters? That's right. She sided with the two sisters. She said, the judge said, I think it was a she, said that the mom wanted it spread amongst the three kids equally, so it was not a true joint account. So it does not go to that daughter. It goes back to the estate where it is frozen. So that has ramifications across the country. Many people, adults, have put a joint account with a child to help pay those immediate expenses, and sometimes it works because the banks are all over the map. They're doing whatever they want to do, but some banks and more banks increasingly are going, that comes back and is frozen. It's not a true joint account. Yes, it's a true joint account. No, it's not, because of what happened in Ontario years ago with that court case. So, does that help answer your question? And if it doesn't, rephrase the question. But it was still fun to share that. And what was your...
So it essentially then goes, but your TFSAs,
the,
go direct if
to the,
there's a benefit.
that's right.
They
And
don't go into the probate?
no, and joint accounts, bank accounts, normally, if it's a true joint account, they are not calculated for probate. You do not pay probate fees on them. And items with a named beneficiary, like a life insurance or RSP, goes to that beneficiary. It's given outside the estate, so there's no probate fee. Gotcha. I did answer it. There you go. Yes?
Once the joint account is with the spouse, will it still be frozen?
No, it might be frozen for a few minutes while they change the automatic debits and credits that need to be changed, but then it's released. Spouse, fine, no problem.
I'm just asking a good question. How do you prove a will legit if it's under the probate radar of 25,000?
Well, you don't need to prove the will is legitimate if, like, that's the process of probate.
Right.
So if the will is going to be probated, then you have to prove it. But you don't pay a probate fee. There still might be probate required, but you don't pay a probate fee if the estate is valued at under $25,000.
So if you have everything arranged that you're not going to probate because you don't own any assets.
No need to.
Probate, then you won't have to prove it being legit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is it common practice or smart to do to get the will probated even before the person dies?
No, you can't. It's impossible to do that. Yeah. A lot of people have asked that. They said, "Hey, can I be ahead of the game? No, it can't be done."
What really is the process of probate? Is it just forms, filling out forms and
Well,
sending it to the government?
the process of probate is you go and you can get a probate kit from Staples or from the library free, or you can do it yourself. And that is you basically are filling in, there's about 6 forms that the court registry will give you. You go up to the probate court. I'm not sure where it is in Surrey. And they'll give you a bunch of forms that you got to fill out. One of them will be to calculate the value of the deceased's estate as of the date of death. Not the day before, not the day after, but when death occurred, what were the assets worth and what was owed. And so it's very meticulous. And the probate folks are very, very particular. So I've heard people say, I've had to go back 6 times. No, that line there isn't. No, that line there. That line's blank. Well, it's because it's not relevant. Well, you need to put on there 0 with the line, and 6. So it's really unenjoyable. But some people do it instead of getting a lawyer to do it. So.
You do have to go to any financial institutions and get the balances on the day of death.
Oh yes, yeah. There's a lot of research and work that goes into it.
Is principal residence exempt from state?
Is the principal residence exempt from the estate is the question. Well, that's the principal residence is exempt from capital gains tax. So if you paid $100,000 for it, now it's worth $500,000. We don't pay a tax on that gain. Principal residence is not exempt from probate. So one of the ways people deal with that is they'll get their son's name. In my case, Nathan. Nathan gets your name on my house, and then when death occurs, the house goes to Nathan, and then there's no probate fee on the house. So that's what people do as a strategy. Another strategy is get a trust going with a lawyer. Trusts can be very good, by the way. I encourage you to, if you have a fairly reasonable sized estate, to chat with a lawyer and see if maybe a trust would work for you. It depends on the estate and your family dynamic. A little warning, even though joint ownership with right of survivorship will get the house out of probate, you don't pay that fee, that's nice, there are some risks involved.
Yeah, I have a question on that.
Okay?
Say if you, what you just said, that you can put your son's name in it, at that time, if the son is not living there, it's not their principal residence.
That's right.
And
So-
then the disposition would occur at the death.
That's right. So there's issues there, and I don't know how much we want to get into that, but if my son already owns a home, okay, there's no there's no capital gains tax on my house, right? And they give me, how many principal residences does CRA give us? One. There's no capital gains tax on Nathan's house, right? Because he's going, but now he owns how many houses? Two. So the capital gains tax clock starts to tick the moment he puts his name on the deed. So some lawyers and tax people are saying not a great idea to have joint ownership with a son or daughter. Others say it's risky, but it might work. You got one kid. There's no divorce possibilities. They're married to Mrs. Kumbaya. I don't know. But if they have a divorce and they have, one of them has ownership of half your house is at risk. So some people say it's not a good idea. Just pay the 1.4%. It's not a big deal. Any other questions? Yes?
What's your views on co-executors?
Co-executors. If I was writing a will right now, I probably wouldn't put a co-executor on. I probably wouldn't. If just because it's a little more cumbersome administratively, they each have to get a notary in their separate towns, or if they live separately, they each have to, get signatures. If I already had a will and had co-executors, I wouldn't worry about it. It's that small of a deal. It's not a big deal.
A contingent vote would be good.
You want an alternate. You want your executor, and you need an alternate in case they can't do the job. Definitely. Or they predecease you, exactly.
How about numbered holding corporations? How does that all?
And when,
That's the most ideal.
yeah, once you get into businesses and estates, it's over my pay grade. So I just go, talk to a lawyer on that one. I'm going to stay here if you have private questions. Julianne is going to, just if you have any questions for Julianne about prearranged funeral planning or whatever. And thank you so much for coming, folks.